Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. In this stream, we're going to walk through the Hotrails Hotwire tutorial. We're going to go through this tutorial step by step and kind of just dig into Hotwire and how it works. And it's actually going to use Devise for authentication. It's going to use Capybara and mini test. So we're going to have some integration, some system tests, and then some unit test. It's going to use fixtures, all the built-in kind of testing stuff, which I don't normally use. I normally use RSpec. So yeah, I think it'll just be fun to go through and kind of build something with a little bit of depth in it using Hotwire and to kind of walk through some of those concepts. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to build. You can find this tutorial online. I'll make sure to update the video description after the live stream and leave a link to it. With that, let's jump in and get started. So, all right, so this is the tutorial we're going to do. This is the Hotrails Hotwire Turbo Rails tutorial, I guess is what it's called. So I don't know if it's this one specifically or this just takes you to, okay, so this takes you to the quote editor so you can see kind of what we're going to be building. So we can create a quote test and then it was created. We can come here and edit it inline. We can remove it. If we add it, we click on it and we can go to it and then we can add dates. So just say 12th. This one we'll choose 28th. And here we're going to add an item name of, we're going to add articles to the dates. Okay. To $10. I'm going to add that. And this should be updating a total on the quote. Test 3. We're going to say that has 2. And those are $20. Yeah, you see we have our quote total updating down there at the bottom. So as we add these things and modify them, so if we change this and we save, it's going to update down there. And we're going to see our message. And all that's happening with Hotwire without reloading the page. So that's pretty cool. So that's kind of what we're going to build in this live stream. Yeah, so let's, I think it's this. Yeah, Turbo Rails Introduction Tutorial. Okay, so let's see here. What are we going to build? In this tutorial, we will build a single page reactive quote editor with only a single line of custom JavaScript for Flash message animation. You can look at the finished project on the quote editor page of this website. Go ahead, create a quote, click on it, start adding dates and add items to see what we'll build. With a quote editor, you can create, update, and delete quotes. When clicking on a quote, you can access the page to create, update, and delete dates. On each date, you can add line items, and every time you create, update, or delete a line item, the quote total gets updated. That's the gist of the application. That's what we just walked through. The project is heavily inspired by a project that they had to build with React, that the author had to build with React, and they wanted to see, it was like the only part of the application that needed that kind of functionality and the only part that was using React. And so when Turbo Rails was, or Hotwire was released in Rails, or Turbo Rails rather, they rewrote that piece of functionality, getting rid of React out of the application since it was primarily just a Rails application. Is the gist of that. Why learn it? Because Rails is awesome. Yeah. Let's do it. We're just going to follow verbatim here. So let's just copy and paste. We'll go ahead and create our application. There we go. Installing all those dependencies. So yeah, this should be fun. It should be a fun little experiment. I realize you can't see my terminal at all because I had it on the other side. Sorry about that. Pull that over here. So basically I just finished installing everything. And we're just going to CD into there. So I'm just going to move this back over here. We're going to switch to this view. It's going to cut off some of the tutorial. So I think that's okay. Like we can scroll to where we need to be. All right. This tutorial was written for Turbo Rails version 1.0. That's relatively what we're on. Let's open up our gem file. And let's just get rid of a bunch of this. Okay. Let's look at our gem file lock. Turbo Rails. We're on 2.0. We're going to leave it. So it is saying to not leave it and use Turbo 1. But I would honestly rather work through it and see if we can't get it to update, because I'm not going to be able to use Turbo 1. I mean I could, but why would I? Right? So we're not going to do that. We're going to skip that part. Okay. So let's run bin setup. All right, and that created our database for us for our test and our development database. Perfect. And now we're going to create a new tmux window here and run bin setup. Let me know down in the comments below if you'd like to see some videos on tmux and kind of my NeoVim configuration, how I store my dot files and configure everything there. That makes it really, really easy to share my configuration across multiple machines, which I do for like my personal setup and then my work setup. Make sure I'm not shaking the desk here. It tends to happen. And let me make sure, let me pull up the, let's see, pull up the chat here. Now, turn that and run bin setup. Let me know down in the comments below if you'd like to see some videos on tmux and. All right, cool. All right, so we're live there. Where is my? Excuse me. Where do I get to this in here? I thought it was like my, it's like my creator dashboard. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to figure out where. I guess we can't see any of it there. We'll just leave it there. I think there's a window in OBS. YouTube live control panel. There we go. And where's my YouTube chat? Chat. Oops. Put that up there. And yeah, let me copy a link. I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat for anyone who is interested and wants to follow along. Check it out. That's the tutorial that we're going to be going through. All right, we're gonna just let it roll, and we're gonna stick with Turbo 2, whatever the current version is. All right, so we have a new tmux window here, and we're gonna rename that. So rename window to server, and we're gonna run bin dev. And what that's going to do is start up our server, and it's also going to handle compiling any of our JavaScript and our Sass, so that we have all of our assets there. And let's go ahead and I think we're going to do kind of a new, no, a new window here. We don't want this one. Need Hotrails. There we go. Localhost 3000. Cool. We have Rails installed. And come back here. We should still have this. Okay, so bin dev, so we're good. So server's running. See the server logs there. It's great. And maybe we need to open this in a different browser. That should stay there. I want a new window arc. File, new window. For that, I want you in the same spot. There we go. Here, here. Good? Good. Okay, so it's good practice to have a solid bin setup script to set up the application. For us, install the gems, the JavaScript dependencies, create, migrate, and seed the database. It's almost a must-have when we work as a team. Yep. All right. Next, we also we have Foreman for when we run locally, so we can look at our proc file. So let's go back over here. We'll open up NeoVim, and we'll look for our proc file, and we'll see here that for the web, it's going to run the Rails server. And I guess it looks a bit different than this, but that's fine. We're going to watch on our JS, and same thing for our CSS there. Okay. Cool. Let's go to the next page. Okay. So let's go ahead and just commit that real quick. So this is basically just like everything from generating the app. So I'm just going to do like a initial commit. So that's done. Now we have a save point, if you will. All right, next up, let's see, the CRUD with Ruby on Rails. Okay, we'll begin our journey by creating a simple CRUD controller for our quote model. The great thing with Turbo is that we can start building our application exactly like we would without it. If we follow the Ruby on Rails conventions, we'll be able to make your application reactive by adding only a few lines of code without writing any JavaScript. And it's not necessarily my goal to not write any JavaScript. It's my goal to not write any JavaScript unless I need to, right? I think the one thing that we forget sometimes, just gravitating towards the things that we like or that we're into or that we've tried out, is that ultimately you end up having to maintain this code. All the code you write is code you have to maintain, right? And that's one thing that I don't think you think of when you're starting a project. Sometimes, you know, hobby projects turn into companies, right? They turn into products. And so, yeah, I think Hotwire's, I mean, it's not a silver bullet, right? It doesn't solve everything. There are definitely still times where I would reach for React or something else. But it's pretty good. Okay, let's see. I'm not going to read the whole tutorial to you, so you know, if you want to read the tutorial, feel free to do so. Let's see. Okay, so a quote index page will display a list of all the quotes. For each quote, we'll have 3 components: a link to show the quote, a button to edit the quote, and a button to destroy the quote. We'll also have a new quote button and a new quote button to add quotes to the list of quotes as described in the following sketch. Okay, got it. Clicking on the new quote button will take us to the quotes new page where we can fill out and create a new quote. Yep, makes sense. Clicking on the create quote button will redirect us to the quotes index page where we will see the new quote added to the list of quotes. And note that the quotes are ordered from the most recent at the top of the list. Clicking on the edit button on a specific quote will take us to the quotes edit page and update the existing quote. Clicking on the update quote button will redirect us to the quotes index page where we can see our updated quote. Last but not least, clicking on the name of the quote will take us to the quote show page. It will only contain the quote title for now, but we'll add much more features to this page later. Testing our Rails application. Testing is a fundamental part of software development. Without a robust test suite, we will introduce bugs in our application and break features that used to work without even knowing about it. We will make our work more painful, and we want to avoid that. In this application, we will write Rails system tests to make sure our application always behaves the way we want it to. Luckily, those tests are straightforward to write. Let's first run the generator to create the test file for us. Okay. So Rails G system tests quotes. If we actually type Rails correctly, that would work. Okay, simple enough. I like the 0 configuration setup here. Someone who has used RSpec for the last decade. It's pretty nice. This will be my first time using system test, actually. I've messed around with mini test, I think, once or twice, but this is like my first time actually using system test or mini test since a lot of the new I think since Rails 5 I think introduced a lot of new testing changes there. I believe that's correct. I've used mini test in like Rails 3, maybe some in Rails 4, but I think mostly Rails 4 was RSpec. Okay, so we have our test in quote test. Okay, let's see. With the help of the sketches above, let's describe what happens in plain English and write some tests at the same time. Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Okay. So, no, Copilot. So we're going to say test, creating a new quote. Okay, so when we visit the quotes index page, we expect to see a title with the text quotes. Visits quotes path. Assert selector H1 text quotes. Yep, that's correct. when we click, pretty simple. Okay. We fill in the name input with let's just assert text because we don't want to assume that it's an li. I don't know what the markup's going to be, so we're going to try to follow that verbatim. Okay, that should be fine. Yeah, fill in. It's actually pretty nice. Test, visit. Pretty nice. Keep it simple. So we need to create a fixture file. So we're going to say touch test fixtures quotes.yaml. Not a huge fan of fixtures, but again, we're going to go with the flow here. And first name. Here, let's just copy this. Okay. Now, if we come back, let's see, we are now ready to add 2 more tests to our test suite. So let's add our setup function, method, setup do is it first? It's just first, right? Yep. Okay, so quote equals quote dot first. This is a test that we just wrote to create a new and test showing a quote do. Test updating a quote do. Okay, visit quotes path. Click link. Yep, quote.name. And we're going to assert selector. Yeah, quote name is there. I don't know if that is. Get out of here. All right, let's see what else we got. Oh, we can get destroying. Okay. Visit quotes path. Insert selector. Click on. It's also very different than what you would do in RSpec for some of this. Insert selector. Edit quote. Okay. Fill in name. Click on update quote. Assert selector quotes. Assert that updated quote is there. Okay, and then let's do the last one. Test destroying a quote. We're going to visit our quote path. Assert text quote dot name. Assert no text quote dot name. Okay. I want to try something. So if we open up a new tmux pane here and we connect our Vim tmux runner and we run this test, will it run? It didn't run any tests. Why not? Yeah, I mean, it should fail all over the place because yeah, error relation quotes doesn't exist. Okay, okay. I mean, it does run the test. Probably just throw it down here. Oops. Now we run it. We'll just run our test down below. I don't know why it doesn't run all of them. Like if I just run the whole file, we get 4 runs, 4 errors. Okay. I mean, it's what we'd expect. Okay, let's just keep going with our tutorial here. See what we've got. So our tests are ready. We can run them. They're all going to fail because we don't have a route. We don't have a quote model. We don't have a quotes controller, right? All those things we don't have. All right, so let's start trying to satisfy some of those requirements. So I almost would never use these generators, but we're going to do it. And because it's going to generate the test and everything in the fixture, we don't actually want to overwrite the fixture. Okay. All right, so let's check out our quote model. And we need to add the validation there, right? Because all of them have to have a name. So validates name, presence true. Ooh, getting too helpful there, Copilot. Calm down. I only want you for autocomplete. Okay. All right. In the create quotes migration, let's add no false constraint to our name to enforce the validation to ensure we never store quotes within an empty name. So create quotes. Name, no false. Okay. Now we can run our migration, Rails DB migrate. That's going to go ahead and create our quotes table. Okay. Now we can Rails G controller quotes to generate our quotes controller. And now we can add our routes. So we come here. We're just going to say resources quotes and add those in. And now let's check out our quotes controller. And we're going to need to fill this in. So before action, we're going to set quote only show, edit, update, destroy, show, edit, update, destroy. Yep. You're just copying everything that's there. Index. Yep. Quotes not all. If quote save. Otherwise, they're going to render new. Redirect to quotes path. Notice quote was successfully created. Okay. All right, tighten up this line height a little bit. Just a little bit. I feel like it's a little too tight. Kind of zoom in there a little bit so you can see that better. And then a little too zoomed in. Okay. Let's create. There's our edit. Update. Destroy. All right, so there's nothing in edit. If quote update quote params, redirect to quotes path. Notice quote was successfully updated, otherwise we render edit. Yep. And then what do we need? We just need set quote. And yeah, name's the only thing we're letting through right now. And let's see. Let's go ahead and convert. Whoops. Just a space thing. Okay. All right, that looks good. All right, last thing we need to do is make our test pass is to create the views. We're going fast here. Yeah, that's fine. We like fast. We like fast. Let's go. Let's get some different music, man. I have no idea what's going to be on this live streaming playlist. Let's go. Okay, markup for the quotes index page. At views quotes index.html.erb. Yes, sir. Let's go. We're just going to copy. We're just going to copy and paste. Let's just do it. We don't care. We don't need to type it all. So quote.html.erb. And then for new.html.erb. And for edit. And this is going to be for our form.html.erb. Do need to install simple form. So Rails, now we need to install simple form. Rails G simple form install. That's going to create an initializer and localization file. But what we need to do is come in here to our config, and we're just going to take the config that they have here, because we are going to be writing some custom CSS for this. And I don't want any Bootstrap related stuff that might come with simple form by default, because we don't use Bootstrap anymore. We don't do that. Don't do it. Don't use Bootstrap. It's not 2005. We're not doing Bootstrap now. Okay. Either write your own CSS, like actually take some time and go and learn CSS, or hire someone to do it, or use Tailwind, right? Which makes it really, really easy. Somehow it makes CSS more approachable by giving you one CSS property at a time as a CSS class that you can then use in your markup. Now all of a sudden, developers that are normally scared of CSS are no longer scared of CSS. I don't understand it, but hey, moral point was don't use Bootstrap. Okay. Don't do it. I'm kidding. I mean, use whatever you want. I really don't care. But seriously. Okay. So we have simple form set up. So we're going to use BIM for our Sass formatting, which, you know what, I'm fine with. I'm actually fine with. I love CSS and really enjoy writing it. So I don't have a problem with it. And I love creating design systems. And so I think we're going to go over like creating a design system in this. So I'm like pretty excited about that part. All right, so we have simple form installed. We're going to need to restart our server because one, we installed a new gem, and two, it has an initializer that only gets loaded upon the boot of our application. So let's go ahead and reload that. And we got to have a successful restart of our server, which means our configuration is good and not broken. All right, so it says here the wrappers configuration lists the input wrappers that we can use in our application. For example, calling f.input name for a quote model with the default wrapper will generate the following HTML. It'll give us a form group, excuse me, a label. And so it's adding all of these classes on here. And it'll give us an input with this class. Okay. Curious what the visually hidden class is for the labels. Maybe we're just using the this, but we'll use this for screen readers. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Let's see here. Ooh. All right. Can you see the CSS classes of the generate HTML match our wrappers definition? That's what simple form does. It helps us define our wrappers for the forms. Oh yeah, so we can go back and look at that, right? So if we come back here to our form, well, I guess you're not going to see it right now. Is it on the quote itself? No. These I honestly don't think are long enough to be on multiple lines. Like maybe, but I don't think so. Like maybe that last one justifies it, but like especially this one, it's fine. Normally we're not going to be working on half screen, and we're not going to need to change these, right? So that's a little bit cleaner for my liking. Same with this. Like we don't need our link to span 2 lines unnecessarily. That's all good. That's good. Okay, so we're all good there. Turns out we only need the default wrapper in our whole application, so we are done with the simple form. The default configuration part contains options. Configure the default classes, labels, and checkboxes. Radio buttons are ready. Default here means that when we type this without specifying it, we get that, right? Yeah. So we don't have to override it. We can also define some localization. So we'll go ahead and do that. Simple form here. Okay. So the configuration above tells simple form that the placeholder for names inputs on quote form should be name of your quote, and that the label for the quote names input should be name. The last line under the helpers key here is used without the simple form gem, but we still add them here as they're related to forms. They define the text for the submit buttons on the quote forms. Okay, I can dig it. When the quote is a new record, the submit button will have the text create quote. When it's already persisted, it'll have update quote. Yep. The markup for the quotes show page. All right, so we need a quotes show page. So let's just get rid of all of those, and we'll go under app, views, quotes, and we'll add a new show.html.erb. We'll go ahead and copy that on over. And it seems like this should work now. So let's run our test. Did any of them pass? None of them passed. Okay. Oh, well, we have some typos in our test. So that would do it. Try that again. Updating a quote. I'm unable to find visible CSS H1 with text edit quote. Edit quote. I'm curious what these screenshots look like. Where do these screenshots go? Temp screenshots. New quote, first quote, delete, edit. Edit is missing. What? Oh. Oh, damn it. This is not supposed to be a... Whoops. Not supposed to be a partial. Got it. That's not what we wanted. Let's rerun the test again. Did we name it delete? Okay. Check our screenshots again. Yeah, so it's delete, not destroy. Okay. So let's go back to our test. Run our test again. All right, so I have one error this time. New quote. Do it again. So is it create? Okay, so I think that works. Let's see if we can get some better test output real quick. That's not helpful. What is mini test reporters? Oh yeah, okay. So that's what we want. Okay. All right, probably want it in development test. Okay. And in our test helper. I'm going to require that. let's just try it, right? Quotes test. Nice. I don't know why it doesn't run the entire file. Like if I'm here. How do we run the file? TF. TF. There we go. The Eagle of Durango. Fascinating. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. Okay, cool. Cool. Get that going there. So we got a nice visual output. Thank you, mini test reporters. Appreciate you. Yeah, let's keep going. Here, let me hide myself for a minute. You don't need to stare at me. Let's see what we have next. So we've got the quote show page. We run our test. The test passed. We do not see this. We do not see that. What happens if we run that? Yep, they just run. Looks like this is already in here for Selenium headless Chrome. That's already there, so we don't see it. Yeah, we'll go ahead and restart our server again just Be on the safe side. Pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and commit. I'm pretty happy with with my .files configuration, so I'm gonna go ahead and push that up. Okay. Yeah, server's running. We're good. Tests are passing. We're good. Let's go ahead and run that test file one more time just to show you that we are good to go. Okay, turbo drive form responses must redirect to another location. That works as expected unless we submit an empty form. Even if we have a presence validation on the name of the quote, the error message is not displayed as we could expect from the form submission fails. If we open the console in our dev tools, we'll see the cryptic message. Form responses must redirect to another location. Okay, so this is around how Turbo Drive handles error responses and that you have to return unprocessable entity. And so we're going to need to do that in our quotes controller. We haven't seen this because we haven't even opened up the application, which I think is really cool, right? It's actually really cool because here we're able to stay in a flow state here. And whoops. What are you doing? What are you doing? We're able to stay in that flow state instead of going in the application and trying to mess around with it over and over. And let's just format the whole thing, make sure we're good. Yeah? Yeah? Oh, LSP timed out. I went too fast for it. Okay, we'll get rid of that, get rid of that. We're good. Our test should still pass if we run the test. And it does. Okay. So now, what do we need to do? So we have that. We have unprocessable entity. Cool, we're good. Now our CRUD is working perfectly. But the user interface is really ugly. In the next chapter, we'll fix that where we create a small design system for our quote editor. Let's see, seeding our application with development data. When we launched our server for the first time, we didn't have any quotes on the page. Without development data, every time we want to edit or delete a quote, we must create it first. While this is fine for a small application like this one, it becomes annoying for real world. I mean, it's annoying for even small ones like this one, I think. Let's see. Every time we want to add a new feature, most Rails applications have a seeds file. Yeah, we already have a fixture. They're not great fixtures because they're fixtures, but I personally like to use FactoryBot. We're going to have to get another tripod to have the camera off the desk because it shakes. Let's see here. If you use fixtures for your test, you may know instead of running bin rails dbc, you can run bin rails db fixtures load to create development data for your fixtures file. Let's tell Rails to do this. Okay. So let's open up our db seeds. And we're just going to delete all these comments in here because I don't know. They're not helpful. Okay, so we're going to seed the database by running db fixtures load. And so what that's going to do when we seed, so we're just going to go ahead and create a new window here. We'll just call this console. So we'll do Rails db seed, and then we're going to do Rails console quote dot all. And you'll see we have first quote, second quote, third quote. Now there's something off with our styling here. I don't know why. It's something in the Rails console, in the IRB, new version of IRB. I'm not sure. Because I'm pretty sure. If we look here, well, I need to see what color it is. Yeah, it's definitely this color here. Okay. Oh my goodness. Looks like our highlight's still going to be off a little bit. I don't know what else that's going to affect. Doesn't look like anything there. Because it's going to be this color here. That changed it, and not the way I would have expected. I mean, you know what? That's fine. That's better than nothing at all. Okay, there's our quotes. Good. Excuse me. All right. So now we've seeded it. We're good. Cool. Let's commit. All right. Now we're going to do some design system stuff. My favorite. I love design systems. Let's go ahead. See what we got a bunch of buffers open. It's interesting. So now we've lost some of our colors there. No, I guess as we do open something up, then that kind of goes away because we're on 2 1 2 1 2 1. That's on 2C 2C 2C. And so kind of needs to be a little bit darker. Sorry. I know this is not a NeoVim stream, but I've been tweaking this to make it good for everyone out there. All right, so 212121 is the main color. Why is that the main color of Capuchin? Oh, it is. Okay. 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 So Okay, so go ahead and update that. And let's go ahead and close that, reopen it. And quote controller. Now our telescope background is going to be a little bit lighter than our background, so it doesn't just blend in with the background. We could make our highlight row a little bit lighter if we wanted to. Just to kind of make that pop. Like, what if we used like this color? I'm just curious. Like, what would it look like? My stream and no one's here, so you know, enjoy the NeoVim. So selection color. Yeah. Yeah. What do you do if I do that? Huh? Are you just like bright pink? Lavender. Not very good. Obviously we'd have to change. We'd have to change the other colors too. We're just gonna leave that. That's fine. I would like it to be more gray and less brown. I don't know why it's so brown. It says 2C. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I'm not gonna be messing with that. We're gonna be doing CSS. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, I might have to, for part 2 of this, I think I'm gonna hook my tripod up. I might have to order another tripod though. That's gonna get annoying to move around. Anyways, even if this is a Turbo Rails tutorial, it's not a reason to build an ugly quote editor. I 100% agree. Take pride in your work. Learn CSS if you don't know it. Learn about accessibility. Build web tools that are the best that they can be to provide the best experience for users, for all users, right? I think I have led many different accessibility efforts and have led trainings for developers around accessibility. And more developers need to learn about accessibility and building accessible web, because it's not enough just to do the back end, right? It's not enough just to fetch the data in a performant way or to call a service and perform some action or retrieve some data. Once it gets back to the user, it can't just be a matter of, okay, we rendered it, the end. Job done. Because it's not the case, right? If you really, I mean, if you have a very limited demographic or a very niche product and, you know, small set of users, maybe that's fine. But in my opinion, you should be building the accessible web, and that also includes building design in a way that is unobtrusive. All right. Anyways, side rant. Let's see here. I knew I would create a course website to showcase the code editor, so I thought, why not build a design system for the course platform and the quote editor and show how I did it? Okay, yeah, that's fair. I want to build a course website as well, so that's interesting. We're going to use the BIM methodology. Let's open that up in a new tab. BIM. All right, well, I guess we're not going to read all of that right now, so that new tab is not as useful as I thought it would be. Let's see. For naming conventions, we'll use the BIM methodology. It is straightforward, and we can summarize it in only 3 rules. Number 1, each component or block should have a unique name. Let's imagine a card component in our application. The .card CSS class should be defined in the card.css file, and its name should be unique. That is the letter B in BIM. It stands for block. Each block can have many elements. If we take the back of our card example, each card can have a title and a body. In BIM, we will name the corresponding CSS classes .card__title and .card__body. We ensure that naming conflicts are not possible by prefixing the element's name with the block's name. If we have another block, .box, with a title and a body, box__title and box__body won't conflict with card__title and card__body, thus making sure there won't be any conflicts between those classes. That's the letter E in BIM. It stands for element. Each block may have modifiers. If we take the back of our card, for example, maybe they can have different colors. The names of the modifiers could be card -- primary, card -- secondary. That's the letter M in BIM, and it stands for modifiers. So block, element, modifiers. BIM methodology. And it's a really straightforward methodology for naming, as long as you don't deviate from it, and you also need to come up with a convention for utility base classes if you're going to have any of those as well. Well, I have this simple methodology. Naming becomes very easy, and it prevents us from having to deal with one of the most frustrating aspects of CSS, naming conflicts and overrides, right? All right, organizing our CSS files. Now that we have a solid naming convention, it's time to talk about the file organization. As this application is quite simple, we will have a simple architecture. Our app assets style sheets folder will contain 4 elements: the application.sas.scss manifest file to import all of our styles, a mixins folder, which will add Sass mixins, a config folder where we'll add our variables and global styles, a components folder where we'll add our components, and a layouts folder where we will add our layouts. What's the difference between components and layouts? Components are independent pieces of a web page. They should not be concerned with how they are laid out or on which page, only about their style. An excellent example of this component is a button. Buttons don't know where they will be placed on the page, and they shouldn't care, right? A layout, on the contrary, does not add style. It's only concerned with the margins, centering, or anything that helps us position components relative to one another. A good example of the layout is a container that will center content on a page. If you're curious, the Every Layout book shows a list of layouts almost every web page used and their associated CSS. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that existed. Let's check that out. Go ahead and drop a link to that in the chat too. $69, huh? That's pretty pricey. I mean, it's a pretty cool visual structure of how they have it laid out. I would say it's probably worth the $70 if you want to really understand how this stuff works. Probably gonna end up picking that up. That's pretty cool. It is pricey, but seems pretty cool. Okay. Note about components and margins. In theory, as components are concerned only about themselves, they should not have outer margins. When we design individual components, we don't know where they'll end up being placed on a page. Let's take, for example, a button. It wouldn't make sense to add margins to buttons, as sometimes it will be laid out horizontally, sometimes it'll be laid out vertically, with more or less space between them. We don't know in advance the context of where individual components will be used. That's the responsibility of layouts. As a design system grows, components will be much easier to reuse if it's easier to make them collaborate with one another. It will be much easier if those components don't have external margins. With that said, in this tutorial, we'll break this rule. We will add margins directly on the components themselves. For example, the quote CSS class will have a bottom margin. In real life, we might want to delegate this to the responsibility of the margin utility or a stack layout, or make it easier to reuse the quote component in other contexts. As this application will not evolve, and I didn't want to make things too complex, I chose to break the no external margin on components rule. However, it's a great rule to keep in mind the next time you build a real design system. Enough theory. Now let's write some Sass. Okay, that's actually very interesting. And it does make sense, right? Like, you don't know where you're going to end up laying out a component on a page. You don't know where, you just don't know where it's going to end up on the page. How many of them are going to be next to each other, right? The layout of those things should be, or the responsibility of those things should be the responsibility of the layout itself, right? A component should be isolated, and we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to break that. I think I'll just add a couple of margin classes or whatever, some sizing utility classes, and we'll use those because I don't think we should be breaking that. While I appreciate the effort to be concise and stay on target, I also think if you practice incorrectly, then you're going to learn incorrectly, right? And it's a lot harder to unlearn those things if you end up doing them over and over again while practicing. They become muscle memory, they become habit, things that you just do and you don't think about it. And so I would argue that it's better to just learn to do it the right way to begin with. All right, let's go ahead and create our folders up here. So I'm just going to jump out of, well, no, let's do this. App, assets, style sheets. Okay, so what are we going to have in here? So we're going to have a mix-ins folder. We're going to add a config folder. We're going to add a components folder and a layouts folder. Okay. And yep, we got that. All right. The mix-ins folder is the smallest of all. It will only contain our media SCSS, which will define the breakpoints of our media queries. In our application, we'll only have one breakpoint. We'll call it tablet and up. Okay. So this is going to be in our mix-ins. Weird. And copy our comment here. So mix-in. So this is going to be a Sass mix-in. Media, not quote. Apparently I can't type right now. Okay, if query is equal to tablet and up, media, min width, 50 rem, content, right? Let's break it down. When writing CSS, we'll first write the CSS for mobile. Okay. All right, my component. Then we might want to have some overrides for tablets and larger screens. In that case, we'll use our media query. Include media, tablet and up, and then we'll write our other styles in there. This is what we call a mobile first approach. First, we define our CSS for the smallest screen size, and then override for larger screen sizes. It's good practice to use this kind of mix in our Sass code. If we later want to add more breakpoints, such as laptop and up or desktop and up, it becomes very easy to do so. It also clarifies what the breakpoint corresponds to, as tablet and up is easier to read than 50 rem. It also helps us keep code dry by avoiding repeating the magic 50 rem number everywhere. Imagine we want to change 50 rem to 55 at some point. This would be a maintenance nightmare. We'd have to change the value. I mean, maintenance nightmares. Yeah, I guess so. If you use 50 rem in other places and you can't simply do a find and replace all, that does become a little bit annoying. Let me bump this code up a little bit. Make sure you can see that well. Yeah, that does become a little annoying, but I also think that it's not a nightmare. I've seen way worse spaghetti code that was mangled beyond recognition and very, very hard to work with and change. Yeah. Last but not least, having a curated list of breakpoints in a single place helps us choose the most relevant one, and it also relevant one limit. I think it meant and limit our options. Okay, the configuration folder. One of the most important files is the variables file to make a robust design system. This is where we'll choose our beautiful colors, readable fonts, and make spaces scale to ensure consistent spacing. Create a variables file and make it look a bit magical, throwing variables around, but rules like multiple of 8 rules, spacing, and font sizes to help us build the variable file. The font sizes and spaces almost always use the same scales. I often choose a personality that will guide the choice of the fonts and colors. When creating a website from scratch, I often choose a personality that will guide the choice of fonts and colors. Got it. Enough design talk. Let's start building this. First, let's start with everything we need in our design system, such as fonts and our text design. Fonts, families, color sizes, and line heights. Got it. Okay. It is going to be in the variables. Yes. Okay. Add variables. Yep. Okay. So we're going to create a root element. I mean, again, we're just going to copy this. I don't need to type all this. Let's see. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so we have that. So it looks like here we have some default line heights. And yep. 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 24, 32, 40, XXXL. Okay. Text header, text body, text muted. We're using HSL. Great. The first set of variables will help us ensure our text design is consistent throughout our application. It's also essential to keep consistent spacing for paddings, margin in the application for good design. Okay, so let's also we're going to add some spacing scale. And it's going to be a 4, 2-point scale multiplier, right? 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. Nice. Okay. That's actually a nice simple scale. I like that. We're also going to need some colors, right? So let's go ahead and just grab the colors. We don't need to type all of these. Again, using HSL, which is nice. Okay, the last part of our variables file will contain various user interface styles such as border, radiuses, box shadows. Once again, the goal is to ensure consistency. All right, so we'll set up our default shadows, border radius, and borders. Okay. That's it. That's all. That's all the variables we need. Done and done. I'm kidding. Not yet. Okay. So for config, we also are going to need a reset.scss and we're going to do a global reset here. All right, let's see what our reset does. We reset all the margins and padding to 0. We add style for default text and default links. All right, so we're going to reference our colors here for a background color. We're going to reference, oh, we don't need an extra space there. We are going to reference also, it's fine. Line height, font family, great. Header text, header line height, header sizes. And although this is usually not good practice because we want to be able to use any heading and override the font size. This should be fine for this because it's a pretty simple application and the hierarchy of information should be fine. Okay. Let's start creating some components. All right, so we're going to come in here and we're going to create a I'm going to use button instead of BTN because I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. Okay. We're going to use our spacing in there. We're going to use our border radius in there. So a little transition for the color. Nice. Note that in SAS, the and sign corresponds to selector, the and nested. Yep. We then need to add our 4 modifiers to create the 4 variants of the button. Oh, nice. Nice. So we can just kind of add these right there. Right? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So we have light, dark, primary, secondary. Very cool. Okay. Same rules apply there. Yeah, this is nice, man. So let's create our quote style. All right, so this is the one where we're adding the margin where we shouldn't, right? The margin here. Yeah. Yeah. This we shouldn't do. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. I don't think we should do that. Okay. The quote component is just a Flux container with a quote actions element containing the buttons to edit and delete the quote. Thanks to the BIM methodology, our CSS files are very clean. Yeah, they are actually. I'm actually a huge fan of that. Like, this is also really easy to read and understand. And so that's pretty good. Let's see. Let's now design our inline forms. In the previous chapter, we defined simple form wrappers that will be used in our forms of our application, and we need two components to design our forms: a form and a visually hidden. Okay. Let's start with the form component. Note that it has the same border, width, and vertical padding as the button component, which again, we're using button, not BTN. You know what? Let's just rename it to BTN. Just for the tutorial's sake. And if we want to rename it later, we can. Okay. So let's add a form component. And let's see. It's going to add some styling here. So we're going to have our flex as our form as a flex container. We have a group, which is going to flex to full fill of content. We're going to have our input there. Nice. Okay. And last but not least, we need this visually hidden component. And what is this? You might be wondering why we need a visually hidden component to hide the input label and not simply remove it from the DOM or to use the display none. For accessibility purposes, yeah, all inputs must have a label. Shamelessly stolen from Bootstrap. That's fine. We're not going to include that. It's fine. Okay. Let's create an error message component. All right, so we just need two layouts now. So we're going to add container.scss for our first one. And that's just going to be our main container. It's going to be a wrapper. It's going to use our padding as defined. By default, it's going to be full width on mobile. And then we will constrain it to 60 rem on tablet and up. And then it looks like we need a header component. Okay. Or sorry, a header layout. It's interesting that that's part of, yeah, I guess it is part of the layout. Okay. Now that we have all of the necessary CSS, we need this manifest file. Well, we have the manifest file, right? We just need to update it to actually import all of that CSS. So we're going to import our media query definition. We're going to import our variables, then our reset. Then we're going to import our components. And then we're going to import our layouts. Very, very nice and clean CSS. Huge fan of that. Nicely done. Let's go ahead and commit that. Let's we can see all of it there. We'll go ahead and use LazyGit. If you haven't used LazyGit yet, I recommend checking it out. It's a pretty cool terminal-based Git tool where you can see all of your changes. You can add individual files for commit. You can delete files. You can add hunks from a file for commit. Very cool. Cool. Now we have our initial CSS. Let's go on to the next one. All right. Next up is Turbo Drive. I'm going to take a quick break. I need to grab some more water, and then we'll come back and we will keep working on this. We're now getting into the turbo part. We can actually take a look at our application now too. If we don't have a root page, so I think we go to like quotes. Yeah. So pretty wild that like this is the first time we've opened the application in the browser, and like it looks great. Haven't touched the CSS. Kind of going back and forth trying to tweak it. Obviously it was all provided for us, so we didn't need to go through that process, but pretty cool. You'll notice that we don't have any margin on the bottom of our quotes. That's because we left that off, right? That was the one thing that they said they were going to violate. And that's because they don't have a utility for that. And I think the place that I would probably put that is here. In a utilities file. And let's see. There's got to be a nice way to do this. So let's look at our variables. Let's see, what's our space scale? So here's our space scale. Let's see what... I feel like we want something... Interesting. Okay. So interesting if we duplicate. I don't necessarily want to duplicate it. So wait, maybe we don't need this. And maybe we need a mix-in. And this needs to have our spacing scale, but we need this as a map. And then if we use SAS to generate our spacing utilities, this is going to give us an example of let's see, how do we include these? So for margin and padding, right, we're going to come here. Include spacing. Let's go back here, and I want to, here's like an example is it's going to generate I mean, we don't need all of that, but it's going to generate something like that. Right, and it's going to do the same thing for padding. Something like that. So we'll have margin classes that also match our spacing classes. I don't know if that's ideal, right? But let's see what it's like. Okay, so quotes index. We're going to render the quotes, and instead of having it on the component itself, we do it as part of the layout. So if we render quotes and then we look at quote, this is what's going to get rendered. So maybe we need the spacing classes, maybe we don't, right? Maybe we just come back here and we say this is in a div, right? Oh, because we don't have the actual classes there. That's the problem, right? We don't have all of the available classes to do to lay it out in the way that we normally would, right? Normally, if we were using like Tailwind or something, we have classes for Flexbox, we have classes for all the things. So here we could do my, and if we come here and reload, you'll see that we get that, right? And I don't know which one we actually want, so we're just kind of testing it out here. It might small. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but like that does work in generating those classes, and our naming, instead of being arbitrary numbers, I mean, I guess it's arbitrary sizes. But that's kind of how we would do that. We give it sizing there, and that way it's here. I mean, this is technically still in the component itself. And so realistically, the way that we would do that is we would have some layout classes, or we would define another element here as kind of the quote container, and then have that be a layout component, right? So we're going to keep these classes here just because I think it's useful to have for learning. But what if we were to take our index and we were to say div class equals quotes list, right? And then if we were to come back to our CSS under our layouts, we would add quote list, right? let's come here, grab that, go back in here, just to show you how we would extend this, right? If you were to add something else. This is our quote list, right? And now we can display like a grid or do, you know, something like that. Let's reload that. Okay. Now, it's not, it doesn't look like it's spacing it out. Let's take a look. So it's quotes list instead of quote list. So that's all. So let's go back to our index and say this is a quote list. And now we have our quote list, but we're not including that in our manifest. All right, we're going to keep our spacing because we might need that. And debatable whether this is probably a component, honestly. And yeah, let's move it there. What? Did that move all of them? Hold on. I think that got messed up. All right, so app, assets, style sheets. Layouts, that's right. Config, that's right. Components. That seems right. I think this got messed up. App, assets, style sheets. Like that. Like that. Okay. And there's our quote list component. I'll come here, reload. That's because it's quote underscore list. Okay. Now we have it in this like grid layout here, which is not exactly what we wanted, right? But the goal was to show how we would kind of extend that. And one of the things we could do here is grid template columns. Really, we just want this to be in a single column. Is it grid columns? No. Let's see. What is the setting? Yeah, I think okay. That's good. We have it there. Now, again, the spacing here is, and our margin is based off of that spacing scale. And so the layout handles it versus having those utility classes. And so technically we could go back here to our mixin, and like, do we need this? Let's just remove it. Let's just remove it for now. Let's come here to our manifest. Let's get rid of that spacing mixin, and let's just use that quote list component, right? Like, that's not too complicated to add another component there. That took a few minutes to add quote lists, which is a very simple single column grid to lay out our quotes. And now we're not violating that because our actual quote itself doesn't contain any margin, right? So we can put these anywhere. So it doesn't violate that rule. So we're good. Let's go and do one more commit. Let's see. It's saying we modified DS store, but we shouldn't have any DS store. So let's delete that. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so we're gonna say like add quote list, something like that. Okay, so we should be good. Let's go ahead and close out DevTools there. What are we doing next? Again, next up we're going to do turbo drive. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to go get some water, and then we're going to come back and we're going to jump right into turbo drive. So I hope you're ready. It's going to be kind of a long one, but you know what? It's okay. You can watch this in pieces. Maybe we'll break it up and we'll have some different parts here as we go. So with that, hang tight. We'll be back in a few minutes, and keep going. All right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Welcome back. All right, we've made a ton of progress in this stream. This is like stream's about 2 hours long right now. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna see if we can get all the way through this tutorial. All right, so let's go ahead and switch to our vertical. Hey, how's it going? How are you? If you're still with us right now, awesome, because it's kind of late. It's about 1 a.m. But if you're watching this later, please make sure that you like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. It helps me keep creating content like this for you. And comment down below and let me know what you're working on and what you're building. Are you using Rails? Have you used Hotwire and TurboDrive? Do you use BIM, block element modifier, for your CSS, or are you using Tailwind or even something else, right? Comment down below and let me know what you're building, what you're working on. I'd love to interact with you and talk about that. Okay, next up, we're going to be jumping into TurboDrive, which is going to be the first part of Hotwire. And so we'll kind of work through this and just keep on going. So let's do it. All right, so we'll switch back here. I'm gonna go and hide myself. I need to move myself to the other side. Let's go vertical. That's fine. All right, in this chapter, we'll explain what TurboDrive is and how it speeds up Ruby on Rails applications by converting all link clicks and form submissions into AJAX requests. Excuse me. All right, understand what TurboDrive is. TurboDrive is the first part of Turbo, which gets installed by default in Rails 7 applications, as we can see in our gem file and our JavaScript manifest file, application.js. So we can go look at those real quick. You're going to see them. All right, Turbo Rails is right there. And if we look at application.js, we're going to see hotwired Turbo Rails gets pulled in there as well as controllers. Okay. By default, TurboDrive speeds up the Ruby on Rails applications, speeds up our Ruby on Rails application by converting all links and clicks and form submissions into AJAX requests. That means that our CRUD application from the first chapter is already a single page application, and we had to write no custom code. With TurboDrive, our Ruby on Rails applications will be fast by default because the HTML page we first visit won't be completely refreshed. When TurboDrive intercepts a link click or a form submission, the response is an AJAX request, so it will only serve and replace the body of the HTML page. In most cases, the head of the current HTML page won't change, resulting in a considerable performance improvement, right? Because we're not having to re-download all of the CSS and JavaScript and hit any CDNs or pull assets from anywhere else that we might link to, Google Analytics, other things like that, right? We're just going to pull in and replace the body. Now, obviously, if you have script tags and stuff in the body, those are going to get re-rendered. But for the most part, things that are loaded once and should really only load once on page load are only going to load once, and you're not going to have to reload the page each time. So that's really nice. That's kind of how TurboDrive helps give us that performance bump. Let's see. All right, TurboDrive works by intercepting click events on links and submit events on forms. Every time a link is clicked, TurboDrive intercepts the click event, overrides the default behavior by transforming the HTML request the link click would normally trigger into an AJAX request. When TurboDrive receives the response, it replaces the body of the current page with the body of the response, leaving the head unchanged in most cases. That's why new Ruby on Rails 7 applications are single page applications by default. The page we first visit won't be completely replaced, only the body tag will. For clicks on links, a pseudocode implementation would look like this. All right, so we have the link here. We grab all the links using query selector all. Then we iterate over the links. We add a click event listener and prevent default. And then, Hotwire does its stuff over here. All right, does its magic over here. Let's see. The same logic applies to form submissions. When a form is submitted, TurboDrive intercepts the submit event and overrides the default behavior by transforming the form submission into an AJAX request and replacing the body of the current page with the body of the response, leaving the head unchanged. for form submission, pseudocode implementation would look like this. Right, essentially the same thing, right? We're going to grab all the forms, we're going to iterate over them, add a submit event listener, and prevent defaults, and then we're going to run the custom code from Hotwired Rails. So nothing too different there. However, as discussed in Chapter 1, there is a breaking change in Rails 7. Invalid form submissions have to return a 422 status code for TurboDrive to replace the body of the page and display the form errors. Let me repeat that. Invalid form submissions have to return a 422 status code for TurboDrive to replace the body of the page and display the form errors. The alias for the 422 status code in Rails is unprocessable entity. That's why, since Ruby on Rails 7, the scaffold generator adds status unprocessable entity to create and update actions when the resource couldn't be saved due to an invalid form submission. Note, if you've been working with Rails for some time, you might be familiar with TurboLinks. TurboLinks is an ancestor of TurboDrive. It only intercepted links, clicks on links, but not form submissions. Now that Turbo also handles form submissions, the authors renamed the library from TurboLinks to TurboDrive. So this is actually an iteration of TurboLinks, right? That is now TurboDrive. If you start out with it and you're aware of it, I think it's fine. I've worked on an application where we never had it enabled. And so even when we switched to using Hotwire, which took a while for us to get there, and TurboDrive, we have TurboDrive disabled by default. You have to opt in anywhere you want to use Hotwire because in our code base, as large as it is, there'd be adverse side effects, right? From just having it globally on because our code base is a pretty old Rails application. It's over 10 years old now. So if you've been working with Rails for some time, yep, we just read that. Okay, so disabling TurboDrive. Yeah, we may want to disable TurboDrive C, like I said, for certain link clicks from our form submissions. In some cases, for example, this can be the case when working with gyms that don't support TurboDrive yet. At the time of this writing, the devised gym does not support TurboDrive. A good workaround is to disable TurboDrive on devised forms, such as the sign-in and sign-up forms. We'll come back to this problem in the future chapter, but for now, let's learn how to disable TurboDrive on specific links and forms. So yeah, you just said data turbo false, right? Attribute, that's it. Yeah, that's just an experiment. We don't need to add that. Okay, so let's just take a look at our quote editor. So we're going to do new. And I want to inspect this. We're going to pull up the network tab and test, create. We're all getting fetches there. All right. It looks like text HTML though. We have to restart our server. I don't think it was actually... Oh yeah, it's TurboStream. Okay, okay. We're good. We're good. Okay. All right, that should be good. Let's go back to our tutorial. All right. Yeah, and to disable TurboDrive in the entire application, you do turbo.session.drive equals false. Yeah, this is what we do in our application to disable Turbo globally. And then again, we opt into it where, that right there, we opt into it on a case-by-case basis, right? So we don't have any adverse side effects from using it. All right, reloading the page with data turbo track equals reload. In most cases, TurboDrive only replaces the body of the HTML page and leaves the head unchanged. I say in most cases because there are situations where we want TurboDrive to notice changes on the head of our web page. Let's take, for example, the deployment where we change the CSS of our application. Thanks to the asset pipeline, the path of the CSS bundle will change. All right, we'll get a new fingerprint. However, in the head never changed. Users on the website before the deployment who renamed the website after the deployment would still be using the old CSS bundle, right? To solve this problem on every new request, TurboDrive compares the DOM elements with data turbo track equals reload in the head of the current page. And if there are differences, TurboDrive will reload the entire page. Fascinating. Okay, right? I don't know what color the text should be for that. That's an interesting choice. Okay, so if we look in here, yeah, we have it right there, right? Data turbo track is reload for both of those. Got it. Okay, so if we find a difference in those, it's going to reload the whole page. Nice, because that's what we'd want. We don't need to make a silly temporary change. I understand how it works. We're good. Ooh, TurboDrive. Let's see. Let's add a component for that. That's cool that it's got, I mean, it just has its own class, right? So TurboDrive, turbo progress bar. Want that file comment too. Follow those conventions and make sure. Make sure that we include our turbo progress bar. We're just gonna add a fucking excuse me. Sorry, we're just gonna add we're just gonna add before action and add a sleep to everything. Okay, that's how we can visualize the progress bar. There's the progress bar. All right. Create. There's the progress bar now. Now it's red because it needed a reload so we could get it. Cool. So it matches our styling. All right. Now obviously we don't want I could honestly just see that getting shipped in something and yeah. Like, man, every page request is super slow. I wonder why. I didn't even realize you couldn't see the code the whole time there, but all we did was add that component. Let's go ahead and turn safe mode on there because I feel like we're peaking a little bit. Let's jump back here. Yeah, TurboDrive was pretty straightforward. That was good. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Let's go to the next one. Turbo frames and turbo stream templates. Let's do this, man. All right, in this chapter, we will learn how to slice our page into independent parts thanks to turbo frames and turbo streams format. After reading this chapter, all the CRUD actions on quotes will happen on the quotes index page. So instead of navigating away, we're going to be reloading everything there with those sweet, buttery turbo stream responses. That's what we want. And this stuff's really nice. It's not always necessary. But when you think about it and you tend to reach for a JavaScript library, or even just some JavaScript, custom JavaScript for some of these things, you don't need to. And it's really cool. Now, again, it doesn't solve every problem, right? It is not a silver bullet by any means. There are definitely still times where you have very complex UX state and you need a state management library or a framework like React that does a much better job at managing the state. That is still very much a thing, okay? But I would use this, if you're building in Rails, I would use this as much as you can because it's really, really straightforward. And it's just Rails conventions versus the Wild West, which is React. And I know there are some conventions out there, but every project I've worked on seems to write React different. And it's sometimes challenging to work with. Sometimes a challenge to work with. Speaking is also sometimes a challenge. All right, what we will build in this chapter. The new and edit actions happen on different pages in our current quote editor. When we are on the quotes index page, clicking on a new quote button opens a completely different page containing only a title and a form to create a new quote. Clicking on the edit button on the quote opens up another page containing only a title and a form to edit the quote. We would like to avoid this context switch. Instead, we'd like to perform those two actions directly on the quotes index page. Just like in the final quote editor, that's what we're going to learn how to do in this chapter. We'll require only a few lines of code thanks to the incredible power of turbo frames and turbo streams. Before practicing our turbo frame skills, let's make a few sketches of what we will build and update our system tests. Let's go TDD. Kind of, right? Kind of. You know, this is the, yeah. You should write test, right? But test the right things. All right. Our quotes index page currently looks like this. Yep. When clicking on a new quote button, we want the new quote form to be appended to the page right below the header. Okay, yep, so we're going to append it right there. When clicking on the create quote button, the created quote should be pre-appended to the quotes list. Yep. Okay. Okay. When clicking on the edit button for the second quote, the quote card should be replaced by a form to edit the corresponding quote. Okay. Yep, so we click edit, yep. When clicking on the update quote button, the form for the second quote should be replaced by the updated quote. The rest of the behavior should remain unchanged. Clicking on the delete button for a quote should remove it from the quotes list. Clicking on the name of the quote should take us to the quotes show page. Now, let's update our system test. All right, let's close all these buffers. I'm pretty sure we got a bunch of buffers open. Let's close those. And let's go to our quotes test. So the reason I don't use the generator is we have a bunch of other tests in here that are not, like we're not doing anything with. It's fine. It's fine. System test quotes test. Okay. Okay, so did you know what? I'm just going to copy all of it. I don't know what's changed in here, and I don't really care to go and figure that out. I just want to test, run the test, watch it fail, make it pass. All right, that's what we expected. Fail. Epic fail. Wait, I guess you can't see that. Let's switch back to this one. Hello, how are you? Sorry, here's the code. We ran the test failed just like we expected. If you'd like to see it, we can run it again. And you can watch it fail. Yep, we have two failures, just like it says. The two tests corresponding to the creation and editing of quotes. Addition. I don't think that's correct. That's not right. Anyways, our goal is to make them green again with turbo frames and turbo streams. Ready to learn how they work? Let's turbo drive in. What are turbo frames? Turbo frames are independent pieces of a web page that can be appended, prepended, replaced, or removed without a complete page refresh and without writing a single line of JavaScript. In this section, we will learn everything there is to know about turbo frames with a series of small examples. Then we'll come back to our quotes and implement the desired behavior with only a few lines of code. Let's first create a turbo frame. To create a turbo frame, we use the turbo frame tag helper. Let's wrap the header on the quotes index page in a turbo frame with an ID of first turbo frame. Okay, let's close that. We're going to come back to our test at some point. And so we want to open up our index, and here's our header, and we're going to say equals turbo. Oh my goodness, stop. Turbo frame tag first turbo frame do end. Okay. If we have a look at the DOM generated for the turbo frame, it looks like this. I actually want to try something because I think, let's try this. Let's try to open up our Zen browser. And let's go here. And I want to see, what's the keyboard horizontal? Command Alt H for a horizontal split. Command Tell me that's not cool. Right? We come here. Right? And we can split our view. I guess we can't resize it at all. But we can kind of have it going here and have the quotes down there too without having a whole nother browser Chrome, you know, like the browser UI taken up. Zen is based on Firefox, so it's actually really fast. I am more used to Chrome, and so I've played around with it a little bit, but I really like this like split browsing feature. I think this could be super useful. Obviously, I'm a Vim and Tmux user, and so I use splits and panes and things like that all the time, and I find it really, really helpful in being as productive as possible. So, yeah, maybe we'll stick with this. All right, let's get back to where we were. We updated that. What are turbo frames? Here's our first frame. Okay, so we wanted to inspect this. So let's look at our header. Let's inspect it. We're going to see a turbo frame tag, right? See that right there? Okay. So that's a custom element, the HTML generated by the content of this block. This element has a unique ID corresponding to the first argument we pass to the turbo frame tag helper. Yep. The turbo frame HTML tag does not exist in the HTML language. It's a custom element created by the TurboScreen JavaScript library. It intercepts form submissions and clicks on links within the frame, making those frames independent pieces of your web page. Now let's click on the new quote button, and the frame disappears from the page, and there's an error in the console. So let's click new quote. We get content missing. All right, and we get an error in here. Expected turbo frame ID, first turbo frame, and will be ignored. Okay. Would be really helpful if we could make these panes smaller. I'll like resize the split right here. Can you? I don't think you can. Okay. Da, 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 da. Yep. So even if we didn't have this here, so what if we came here and we just open this here, had a new quote, that's going to give us an error. We're going to get it there, right? Reload, console, new quote, error, great, come here. We don't need that open. And now we can just jump between these pretty quickly. Let's do that. I would like to try to get into Zen a little bit more, Firefox a little bit more. So, you know, maybe we'll try that. Let's give it a shot. Why not? All right, when clicking on the link within a TurboFrame expects a frame of the same ID on the target page. It will then replace the frame's content in the source page with the frame's content on the target page. If that's not very clear right now, let's draw a few sketches of this experiment. Okay, so here's the header with that frame. When we click new quote, all right, yeah, let's do that. Let's wrap the form. Really? That's what we copied somehow? Okay. Okay. So now if we come back here, we're going to reload. And now if we hit new, we're going to replace the header with the new form, right? Just going to replace it in there because it's going to take the contents of that turbo frame and it's going to replace it on this page. So that's what we'd expect to happen there. Oh yeah, so that's exactly what we did. Yeah, so when clicking on a link within a turbo frame, if there's a frame with the same ID on the target page, Turbo will replace the contents of the turbo frame of the source page with the content of the turbo frame on the target page. Rule number 2. When clicking on a link within a turbo frame, if there is no turbo frame with the same ID on the target page, the frame disappears and the error response has no matching turbo frame ID element is logged to the console. Remember the strange behavior we had with no turbo frame with same ID in the quotes page? That's exactly what this second rule is all about. Our current quotes index page looks like this. On the quotes new page, let's change the ID of the turbo frame around the frame to not matching. Okay. Now if we come back in here and reload, we're going to hit that. We're going to get content missing. Right. So that's, yeah. Because it didn't contain the turbo frame there. Okay. On the quotes new page. Yeah. So we did that. Let's update the markup of the quotes new page to match our sketches. Not matching. Okay. Let's see. Rule number, when clicking on a link within a turbo frame, if there's no turbo frame with the same ID on the page, Turbo will remove the content of the turbo frame from the source page and log an error. Rule number 3, a link can target another frame than the one is directly nested in thanks to the data turbo frame data attribute. This rule is very useful, but we will need more sketches to understand it clearly. Let's first add another turbo frame with the ID of second frame around the list of quotes in the quotes index page. Okay. Okay. On the quotes new page, let's wrap the form in a frame with the same ID as the second frame. Okay. I see what we're doing. Okay. So on the quotes index page, yeah, we're gonna target a specific frame here. Yeah, we already did that. Refresh it, click new quote, and we should see our quotes list replaced with the new form. Yeah, so we're basically just changing the target. So now we do this. Oh. Yeah, and now clicking this button will replace this frame. Interesting. Okay, so that's how you can target that. Very interesting. So we're going to click this. It's going to hit this route, right, which is new. It's going to render new, and then it's going to look for second frame, and it's going to replace any frame that we have on this page, on the source page, second frame, that we have here in new, because we have here. So it's going to take this content and replace this content with that. Very cool. Okay. So that makes sure that new quote goes to a new page. Okay. Got it. We can add this to whatever we want to use quotes new page. It does not matter if the browser will replace the whole page. For example, so we want to go back to our initial state. So for new, let's get rid of that. Okay. I don't think we actually wanted any of that. It's all just for experimenting, so we should be good. Okay. Next up is going to be using TurboStream. So how to use TurboStream, how to use TurboFrames in combination with TurboStream format, and how to name TurboFrames with some good conventions. So I'm pretty sure this is using like the DOM ID helper. Let's see. All right, editing quotes with TurboFrames. Let's start with a quote editing feature, as this is one of the easiest one of the two. The first thing we need to achieve is that we're clicking on the edit button of a quote in the quotes index page. The card containing the quote will be replaced by a card containing the edit form. Replacing pieces of web page is precisely the kind of job that TurboFrames can do for us. But what ID should we give our TurboFrames? On the quotes index page, each TurboFrame around each quote card should have a unique ID. A good convention is to use a singular name of the model followed by the ID of the quote. Let's sketch out what it would look like. TurboFrame quotes 1, 2, 3. Yep. Yeah, we need the same one on the edit page. Yep. So we want that to be the same convention all around. Okay, so it says, with those sketches in mind, on the quotes index page, let's wrap each quote in a TurboFrame with the ID of quote ID. As each quote card on the quotes index page is rendered from the quote partial, we simply need to wrap each quote within a TurboFrame. Okay, so let's do this. And let's move that over. And we're not going to use that because I know it's just going to go to DOM ID. I don't know why NeoVim is tripping here. What are you doing? Stop. I don't know what is going on there. Okay. There we go. All right. Because if we come back in here and we reload, we can right click, inspect element down here. And let's see if we can hide some of this stuff. Okay. So you're going to see that each quote here is has a TurboFrame, right? Each quote has a TurboFrame, and it's going to be quote underscore the ID. And I think this is going to use, what does this use for the DOM ID? It uses like the object ID or something for it, which is fine. Like you can't traverse this to get in, guess in the database or whatever. So I think that's probably fine. We need a TurboFrame with the same ID around the form and the edit. All right, so we're just going to grab this. Okay. And this is going to be at quote. Okay, let's come back and reload. Now we come here and click edit. You're going to see second quote here. Click update. It updates it in line. We reload. It did save it, but it changed the order because we're ordering them by created at descending. But that's pretty cool. If we do new quote, it takes us to a new form still. Let's submit the form to see if it works as expected. First, let's submit an invalid blank form. Turbo intercepts request events nested in the turbo frame. Clicking on the update. So how do we do that? So we click edit and we do update. Name can't be blank, and we get the error in line. Nice. And then we can get it. And if we reload, that's going to jump to the bottom now. Okay. And that's our unprocessable entity HTTP status code working as expected, right? So we're getting the errors reported and the re-rendering of those errors in line in the turbo frame from the turbo stream. So that's nice. Valid form, it just updates, right? Everything works. Click on a link to show quote does not work anymore. Yeah, DOM ID helper. So DOM ID. It's not true. It's not one. It actually uses object ID. Yeah, we're already using that. I think they're a little different. It might have used the database ID previously, but it looks like it's using the object ID now for that instance. Oh, interesting. So you can just pass the quote. You can just pass the thing. Like that. And that just works. Yeah, it's still using object ID there. Yeah, that works. Okay, edit. Okay, now that our turbo frames have great names, we can continue our work. Showing and deleting quotes. Our implementation above works well for the edit and update actions, but we've introduced two new issues. The link to the show quote no longer works as expected. The turbo frame containing the quote disappears and the error is logged to the console. The button to destroy a quote logs an error to the console. Both of these issues have to do with rule number 2. The turbo frames we saw earlier, let's solve them one by one. So let's go ahead and reproduce those errors so you can see them. Let me go ahead and hide my face so you can see the console here. Okay, so the first one is we can't click on, right? We're going to get content missing because there's no frame to replace. And that should really probably just be a top link, would be my guess for that one. So that we can navigate out of here onto the page. And then the other one is if we try to delete it, we're going to get content missing and we're going to get another error there as well. Okay, so let's jump back here and see how we fix them. Okay. So our quote index page currently looks like this. Yep. As we see, the link to the show quote is still nested within a turbo frame and the ID, the quote ID. However, the quote show page, there's no turbo frame with the same ID. Turbo expects a turbo frame with the same ID in the quote show page. To solve this problem, we will make the links to the quote show page target the top frame to replace the entire page. Yeah, that's what I thought. So now if we refresh, somehow we lost some of our quotes. Oh no, that was just the content missing. Okay, so we can click on there. Now we can get to, whoops. Now we can get to it. We can go back. Okay, so there's problem 1, which is what I assumed. All right, we're just gonna add top to it. And let's see. Turbo expects a turbo frame. Yep, so we added top. So we're good there. Our first problem is solved. We could do top there, but we don't. Okay, yeah, we're not going to do that. It's time for the introduction of the TurboStream format. So, forms in Rails 7 are now submitted using a TurboStream format. Let's destroy a quote and inspect what happens in the logs. Okay, cool. Let's come down here, clear the logs out. We're going to come back, clear the logs again. We're going to hit delete. It's not going to work, but that's okay. We're going to say we started a delete request here, and you're going to see that we processed the request with the quotes controller destroy action as TurboStream. Okay. Yeah, so we started the delete as TurboStream. As we can see, we'll process the destroy action as a TurboStream format. Let's explore what we can do with this format by making our destroy action only remove the turbo frame containing the deleted quote while leaving the rest of the page untouched. In the controller, let's support both HTML and TurboStream formats thanks to the response to block. Let's do it. Okay, so in our quotes controller, in our destroy action, we are going to say respond to do format.html, and we're going to put that in there. Okay. So I have HTML and TurboStream response formats. As with any other format, let's create the corresponding view. Okay. So in our views, in our quotes, right, we're going to have destroy.turbo_stream.erb. Quotes destroy.turbostream.erb, and here we're going to do turbostream.remove, and in here we're just going to do DOM ID at quote. All right, let's delete a quote and inspect the response body of the network tab. Let's reload. Well, it looks like that did work. It just, okay. Look at the network tab. Let's clear it out. We're going to do delete. And we're going to look at our post request here. And we're going to see here that our content type is vnd.turbo-stream.html. Okay. And you can see that the response back is a turbo stream with an action of removed and then a target that has that turbo frame ID, right? And so it ends up removing it from the DOM, looking for an element with this ID. All right, the action was remove. That was the action we specified here in the destroy.turbostream.erb partial. Okay, and right now the TurboStream methods are turbostream.remove, append, prepend, before, after, update, and replace. Okay, so of course, except for the remove method, the TurboStream helper methods, a partial and locals as arguments to know which HTML needs to be appended, prepended, replaced from the DOM. In the next section, we'll learn how to pass partials and locals to the TurboStream helpers. With a combination of turbo frames and the new TurboStream format, we will be able to provide precise operations of pieces of our web pages without having to write a single line of JavaScript, therefore preserving the state of our web pages. One last thing before we move on to the next section. The TurboStream helper can be used with the DOM ID, right? So we can just do that. We don't even need DOM ID. We just, right, assuming we're using the correct naming convention there, which we should be good. The last feature, our quote creation. Creating a new quote with turbo frames. The last feature we need is a quote creation. Before diving into the implementation, let's draw a few sketches on what we will build. Clicking on the new quote button won't bring us to the quotes new page. Instead, the new quote form will appear right below the header on the quotes index page. Then clicking the create quote button will prepend the newly created quote to the list and remove the new quote from the page. To do this, we need 2 more turbo frames. One empty turbo frame that will receive the new quote form, and 1 turbo frame that wraps the quotes list for us to prepend newly created quote onto the correct position. This is described in the sketch below. So we're going to have new quote. Okay. Let's see if we can jump ahead of the class here. All right, so we're going to go index. Here's our header. New quote. And we're going to need that, right? So if we come here and reload and hit new quote, it should render it here. And that means in our new, we need that. Now we hit new. It's going to show our new quote right there. Test, hit a quote. It doesn't do anything, right? Because we haven't added that part yet. That's going to be the stream. Okay, so we've got the new quote button wired up. It's rendering our frame there. Yep, new quote there. Got it. Clicking that, loads it there. Got it. Okay. Okay, we'll have to use... We'll leverage the power of TurboStream to prepend the new quote to the list of quotes and update the new quote frame to be empty again. Okay? Oh, it's a new record here already because we're on new. Right. So you can still wrap that there. That's interesting. Okay. And then on the index page, instead of new quote, we could do DOM ID quote.new. And then oh, interesting. We don't need to nest it. Oh, we don't actually want it in the header. We'll use all the ways there. Okay, go back here, reload. And we'll move this down some. Now, if we click new quote, quote form is going to appear right there. Testing, click create. Obviously, it doesn't prepend because we haven't added that. We reload, we will get it. If we delete, it removes right away. All right, now let's submit it with a blank one. It'll be invalid and errors should appear. Okay, cool. Create, can't be blank. We get our errors. Nice. All right, let's jump back over here. All right, so we basically just need to respond to TurboStream in our create, right? So here, if quote.save, we need to respond to do format.html. And that doesn't need a mile there. Okay, there's our TurboStream. And now we need to come in our view and we're going to add create.turbostream.erb. And let's go ahead and fill that in. All right, and you'll see in here what we're going to do is we're going to call prepend on quotes, and we're going to render the quote partial there, and we're going to render the new quote in it, and then we're going to update the turbo frame for quote.new to be an empty string. And this is going to prepend to quotes. And so we're going to need to go into our index and we're going to need to prepend this. So in a turbo frame, or wrap this in a turbo frame tag quotes do. And kind of move that over there. Over a new form there. Okay, now I think if we reload this and say testing and we hit create, it's going to add it right there on top. Example. Now the problem is that we need it inside of here. Yeah. Let's try that again. All right, so there's our quote list. How can we do this? How can we do this? Let's do this. Can we do that? Can we pass a class to the frame? We cannot. Oh, we can. Okay, so this should just be quote list. Browser's going to render as a ID anyways. Okay, and now if we come back here and we say another one, and we add it. One more, we add it. Delete, 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 reload, new quote, example. Another. And that works. Reload. Another's down there. Delete. Cool. Yeah. So that should all work as expected now. One more time. And we add it right there. Okay, so let's see. First we need to tell, yeah. So we need to do this, which we did. We just added our class on there, which is fine. Yeah, let's check out the network. Let's clear that. We're going to do new example 2. And now if we look at that network request there, yeah, we're going to see that we get the prepend for the quotes. And then we're going to get an empty turbo frame for new quote with nothing in it. Yeah, which is what we'd expect. Okay, so let's look. We're going to do a little refactor here with the block syntax. I'm good with that. I'm all good with the block. Yeah, with this in mind, we can then shorten the way we write our view. Oh, because we can just render quote because it'll automatically render that, right? Right, that's the Rails convention, right? We don't need to be explicit about all those things. If we just follow the convention, it becomes really straightforward. Now, granted, once you start namespacing your application and you have different areas that are namespaced, you can still use this approach, but you end up having to pass the namespace in as well. And again, third time's a charm. We're just going to write this like that because it is super simple. So let's redo this. Here we go. Create, it's added. Reload, it's there. Delete, it's gone. Edit, example 22. Update, reload. All good. Okay, there's one last detail we need to do, which we decided to prepend the created quote to the list, but when we refresh the page, the order of the quotes in the list changes. We always want to keep the list ordered the newest first. Let's add a scope to our quote model. So we're going to come in here, we're going to say scope ordered, and we are going to order ID descending. Okay, and then we'll just use that in our controller, in our index action to order our quotes. So now we come back and reload. They're always going to be on top. Another one and reload. I'm on top. And we refresh. Our order stays the same, so it doesn't jump around like it was before. And it breaks our test. So let's go ahead and fix our test. Quotes. So here we're going to say quote dot ordered dot first. And let's go ahead and open up this way. Whoops. Save that. And let's attach, and we're going to run the whole file there. Let's run our test one more time just to make sure we're green, and we are. Awesome. Let's go ahead and commit. And let's come back here and wrap up. Now that everything works, we're going to add one last improvement. That's what they said a second ago. We want our users to be able to close the new and edit quote forms without submitting them. To do this, we'll add a cancel link that links to the quotes index page on the quotes form. Okay, so we're just going to add a cancel link to the form. All right, just a cancel link. And let's go here. Okay, so we're going to do new, cancel, edit, cancel, edit, cancel, new, cancel. Nice. In this chapter, we replaced our classic CRUD controller on the quotes resource with a modern reactive application with almost no code and no JavaScript. Let's take time to play around with what we've built, open a form, edit a quote, destroy another quote, click the new quote button. Compared to using the front-end library like React, there's no state to manage, no complex actions to dispatch, no reducers. Turbo is a joy to work with. This was a pretty dense chapter, so let's take a break and make sure everything is clear in our heads before we start the next one. In the next chapter, we'll talk about making real-time updates in our application by broadcasting turbo streams with Action Cable. See you there. Okay, I think we've come a long ways here. This is a very long stream now. We're about 3 hours in. We're going to go ahead and wrap it here. We'll pick back up with a part 2 because let's see how many more chapters we have here. So real-time updates with Turbo Stream. Yeah, we have many more chapters to go through. So I think we're going to end here. We'll pick back up with maybe a part 2 of this tomorrow. Maybe we'll pick up another time. That was really good to get us going. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed it. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you're working on, what you're building, what you would like to see next. And as always, keep coding, get after it. And remember, nothing will happen unless you make it happen. I'll see you in the next one. Later.